Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on a really quite unsettling case from Los Angeles history. Specifically, these horrific events over just a couple of nights in November 1944.
That's right. Events attributed to a man. The newspapers, well, they later called him the L.A. Ripper.
Yeah.
And our source material for this deep dive, it comes from excerpts of a text that really lays out the timeline of the crimes, the police investigation that followed.
Right.
And maybe most crucially, it includes details from interviews with the killer himself.
Yeah.
Particularly one with a criminal psychiatrist.
And these sources, they paint a chilling scene right from the start. You're talking November 15th, 1944, downtown L.A.
Yeah.
2 different hotels, 2 discoveries, bodies strangled, viciously mutilated, dismembered. The material is pretty graphic in describing the state they were found in.
It makes it clear immediately this was, violence almost beyond understanding.
Mm-hmm.
And what's notable early on, based on these sources, is how quickly the police actually focused on a suspect.
Really? How so?
Well, you had witness descriptions from hotel staff, people who noticed, suspicious behavior. That, combined with some sharp observations from a patrolman, it led to an arrest pretty fast, relatively speaking.
Okay. And that suspect was Otto Stephen Wilson.
Correct.
And as we dig into the details the source material gives us, the things that came out, often in his own words, they're just profoundly disturbing.
Yeah. So our mission here, really, is to navigate these sources.
Yeah.
Try to piece together the timeline they present, understand Wilson's background as it's revealed in the text, and those key interviews.
And really explore the psychiatric insights.
Exactly. The insights shared at the time. We want to build the clearest picture we can of this case, but, sticking strictly to the material we actually have in front of us.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the source material, it tells us the events really kicked off the evening before the discoveries, November 14th, 1944.
Right. Otto Stephen Wilson met a woman, Virginia Lee Griffin, 26 years old, known as Virgie.
Met her where?
At a bar on Main Street. The text notes she was married, but her husband was away. And it implies she was working as a prostitute.
Got it. So they meet at the bar.
And then head over to the Barclay Hotel. They check in, register under a fake name, Mr. and Mrs. O.S. Wilson.
Okay.
And the account details that after they got settled in the room, Wilson decided he needed to go out. Said he wanted to buy some whiskey.
But that's not all he bought, according to the text.
No. While he was out, he apparently saw a hardware store.
Oh.
And it was there, the sources say, while he was already feeling, quote, tense,
Yeah.
that the idea suggested itself. That's the phrasing used. He goes in, buys a large carving knife, wraps it up, takes it back to the hotel room.
Wow. Okay, so back in the room.
They share the whiskey he bought. They start to undress. And the source includes a specific and unsettling detail here.
What's that?
Before the violence started, he performed cunnilingus on her.
Okay, and then things turned violent.
That's when the shift occurred. The text says they started arguing about money. $5 versus $20, apparently.
An argument over $15.
Yeah. And he struck her, hit her in the mouth with his fist. She fell back onto the bed, and he immediately started choking her until she was unconscious.
And then the mutilation began.
Yes. The description in the source, it's graphic. He dragged her body into a closet, took out the knife he'd just bought.
And
started the, extreme mutilation. Slashing her torso, throat to vagina, pulled out entrails, cut off her breasts, partially severed one arm, completely dismembered one leg.
Just unbelievable.
And almost impossibly, the text even details him trying to dispose of the severed leg in the room's disposal unit.
Did that work?
No, it just clogged it up. And all this was happening chillingly while he was, according to the source, drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes.
The level of detachment is staggering.
Yeah. And once he was finished, he showered, got dressed.
It just walked out.
Pretty much. The material highlights his unnerving composure as he left the Barclay. He gave the maid $1.
$1 tip after that.
Apparently. And left her with that instruction. Please don't disturb my wife. Just bone-chilling.
So he leaves the Barclay. What does he do next? This is still the night of the 14th, moving into the 15th.
Right. And the sources describe this almost surreal interlude between the two murders. He doesn't flee. He doesn't hide.
Yeah.
He goes to the $1 Million Theater, sits down to watch a movie.
What movie?
A horror film, The Walking Dead, starring Boris Karloff.
Wow. And the text even captures his own thought process during this.
It does. A chilling thought he recalled later. All those people. Not one of them knew I'd killed a person.
Just sitting there in the dark.
Yeah. And according to his later confession, this break, maybe even the film itself, it didn't calm him down. He said the, quote, kill lust returned.
So he leaves the theater.
And goes to another bar. There, he meets Lillian Johnson. She also used an alias, Betty Cook. She was 38. And like Virgie, the source indicates she was also a prostitute.
But history repeats itself.
Tragically, yes. They went to the Joyce Hotel. Again, he registers under a false name, Mr. and Mrs. O.S. Watson this time.
And the second attack, similar pattern.
Similar in the initial violence. He hit her, then choked her to death.
But the mutilation was different.
The details recounted in the source are different, yes. This time, he apparently shaved first, using a straight razor.
Shaved himself?
It implies he shaved himself, yes. Then he used that same razor to cut her body extensively. Yeah. From her upper chest down to her pelvic region.
Dear God.
The material also notes he bit her throat and breasts, slashed one breast, and actually bit off a nipple.
Bit it off.
Yes. And the source even raises the possibility that he might have swallowed it. He also cut his own hand during this attack.
Just the level of brutality. And again, his departure.
Marked by that same disturbing calmness. He actually lingered for a bit, spoke to the desk clerk, and repeated a very similar line. My wife is sleeping. Please don't disturb her.
Unbelievable. So when were the bodies actually found?
The discoveries happened later that day, on the 15th. Around 2 p.m., the maid at the Barclay found Virgie Griffin's body. Police were notified immediately.
And the second victim.
Lillian Johnson's body was found later that afternoon at the Joyce. Apparently, there was a missed wake-up call scheduled for 3:30 p.m., which likely led to staff checking the room. Detectives were quickly on the scene at both hotels.
And the police had descriptions to work with?
Yes, thankfully. Hotel staff at both the Barclay and the Joyce, they were able to give police similar descriptions of the man they'd seen with the victims.
That must have been crucial.
Absolutely. That information led to a police dragnet focusing on about a 20-block area of downtown L.A. They were looking for him.
And they found him.
Pretty quickly, yeah. Around 5:30 p.m. that same day, the 15th, an LAPD patrolman, Harry Donlin, spotted a man matching the description at a place called the Red Front Bar. Donlin noticed cuts on the man's hands.
From the second attack, presumably.
Right, so he initially arrested him just on suspicion of robbery. But then he found a matchbox from the Barclay Hotel on the man.
And that sealed it.
That solidified the suspicion. He'd caught the killer. Otto Stephen Wilson.
So, Otto Stephen Wilson, 34 years old at the time. What else do the sources tell us about his background?
Well, he was a medically discharged Navy pharmacist's mate, had about 10 years of service. At the time of the murders, he was working as a dishwasher, kind of living in cheap hotels.
Okay. And when they brought him in?
He was taken to Central Jail. There was an initial interrogation about 2 hours long, which they actually recorded on something called sound discs.
Like audio recordings.
Sounds like it, yeah. During that initial questioning, though, he denied everything. Denied the murders.
But he confessed eventually.
He did. The text details his confession actually happened later, in a patrol car outside the station.
Interesting. What did he say then?
That's where he started describing what he called a kind of craze. He talked about the thrill he got from the idea and how that kill lust, his term, came back after he watched the movie.
Okay. Now, a critical part of the source material you mentioned is this interview with a criminal psychiatrist.
Yes, Dr. Joseph Paul DeRiver. This interview provides a really deep insight because it's based on Wilson's own account of his state of mind, his history.
Right. So what did Dr. DeRiver find out? What about his childhood?
Well, according to the text, DeRiver explored that quite a bit. Wilson talked about being put in an orphanage around age 5 or 6, stayed there till he was 20.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah. Said he barely knew his parents. They were dead by the time he was 15. Mentioned his sister who had also died. And a recurring theme apparently was this deep resentment, feeling he'd missed out on having a mother, on maternal affection. He used the phrase, cheated out of something.
That sounds like a difficult start. What about his sexuality?
He was quite open with Dr. DeRiver, according to the source. Talked about childhood masturbation, first sexual experience around 16. Said his first time with cunnilingus was around 21.
Okay.
He also admitted to having bisexual urges. Mentioned participating in what he called French parties with men. But he claimed that desire eventually left him, and he found, quote, more satisfaction from females.
And critically, regarding the violence.
Yes, this is notable. He strongly denied ever having an urge to kill or destroy men. That urge, he insisted, was only directed towards women. Specifically, he preferred women aged about 25 to 30.
Okay. Did he talk about his marriage? He was married at one point.
He was. He described the marriage as lacking affection, and he revealed his wife had actually reported him to the Navy before his discharge.
Reported him for what?
Her report, according to Wilson's account to DeRiver, included accusations of homosexuality, heavy drinking, threatening her with a knife, and even cutting her buttocks with a safety razor blade.
Cutting her buttocks. That sounds
Right.
early signs, perhaps.
Well, that's where we see a potential link to this urge to destroy the sources focus on. Wilson told Dr. DeRiver that this urge first appeared about 4 years prior to the murders.
Which would line up with the timing of that incident with his wife.
Exactly. He claimed he'd experienced this urge several times before the 1944 murders. Said he tried to suppress it with alcohol, often waking up frightened or chilled.
How did he describe the urge itself?
He described it as this powerful force that just grabbed hold of him when he finally let go and stopped trying to fight it.
What's fascinating here, reading the interview details, is his awareness. Did he know what he was doing was wrong?
That's what he claimed. He told DeRiver, "In my mind, I knew it," meaning he knew killing was wrong. But he felt compelled to act on these urges anyway.
So a compulsion.
A powerful one, apparently. He admitted he was drinking really heavily on the day of the murders, specifically to try and cover up this increasing tenseness, this urge building inside him.
And during the murders themselves, how did he describe the urge then?
He said it involved a desire to see blood, a liking for cutting flesh, preferred using a knife, and always felt this sense of being in a hurry, rushed.
Did he talk about pleasure? Was there pleasure in it for him?
That's a key question Dr. DeRiver asked. Initially, Wilson was hesitant. He said he sort of supposed there would be pleasure, but claimed that at the actual time of the acts, it just wasn't there.
But he did it a second time, just hours later.
Right. And the sources note that later in the interview, he did concede to Dr. DeRiver that there was, quote, a certain amount of pleasure involved, though he struggled to actually describe what that felt like.
And what about the cunnilingus detail? Did Dr. DeRiver explore that more?
Yes, it becomes more specific in the interview. Wilson confirmed he only performed it on the first victim, Virgie Griffin. And significantly, it was before he killed her.
Not after.
No, before.
Oh.
She said it didn't lead to ejaculation, but he characterized it as sexual pleasure. And DeRiver really pushed on this, asking about this extreme uniqueness that you crave, this void that has to be filled, this something within that you are searching for.
And Wilson's response.
According to the transcript in the source, "Well, I've never found it, Doc."
Wow. Heavy. What about the biting? Especially with the second victim.
That was also discussed. He admitted biting around the genitals and thighs to a certain extent on the first victim, but with Lillian Johnson, the second victim, it was more pronounced, biting her neck and breasts, actually severing the nipple.
And the source mentioned possible cannibalism.
Yeah, the source notes this potential act, swallowing the nipple, could be interpreted as indicating a desire to possess his victim, a kind of symbolic consumption.
And just to be clear, intercourse wasn't part of it.
No. Wilson confirmed he had no desire for sexual intercourse with either victim. The violence and mutilation seemed to be the focus.
Did the source mention any other prior incidents besides the one with his wife?
It does bring up one other significant event. Back in March 1943, so about a year and a half before these murders,
Okay.
Wilson apparently grabbed a woman by the throat on a stairway. She screamed, and he fled. He was caught, charged with battery, served a short jail sentence for that.
Did he tell Dr. DeRiver if that same feeling, that urge, came over him then?
DeRiver asked him that. Wilson was apparently unsure. He said something like, maybe it would have, implying if she hadn't screamed and he hadn't fled, maybe it would have escalated.
So if we try to connect all these dots, how did Dr. DeRiver ultimately classify Wilson based on the source?
Well, Dr. DeRiver's formal report to the police, which is quoted in the text, it's quite stark. He described Wilson as exhibiting characteristics of let me get the phrasing right, a necrophiliac and cannibalistic, all of which, when summed up, are the manifestations of the sadomasochistic complex.
Necrophiliac, cannibalistic, sadomasochistic. Quite a label.
Yeah, and you have to remember the context of 1940s psychiatry here, as presented in the source. That label seems to be DeRiver's attempt to synthesize all these behaviors Wilson described and carried out the pleasure from cutting, the focus on post-mortem acts, the biting, the potential cannibalism, all pointing to a severe disturbance involving pain, destruction, and death.
Did investigators look into him for other crimes, like the Black Dahlia maybe, or was that later?
That was later. But the source material does mention they looked into whether Wilson could be linked to other unsolved crimes at the time, including the Georgette Bauerdorf murder, which was another notorious L.A. case.
And any links found?
The source states there was little evidence found to connect him to any cases beyond these two murders of Virgie Griffin and Lillian Johnson.
Okay. So, moving towards the trial, the evidence sounds pretty strong.
It was compelling, yes. You had his detailed confession recorded on those sound discs,
Right.
plus fingerprints found at both crime scenes, the Barclay and the Joyce hotels.
So what was the defense strategy?
Given the nature of the crimes and Wilson's own statements, the public defender representing him went with a defense centered on arguing for a diminished mental state. Insanity, basically.
Ah, the insanity defense. And that led to conflicting psychiatric testimony, didn't it?
Yes, this became the major conflict at the trial. The defense brought in psychiatrists, the source names Dr. Glenn Myers, Dr. Victor Parkin, and Dr. Edwin C. McNeil.
And they found him insane.
They testified that, yes, they believed he was insane. They described him as a daydreamer, prone to fantasies, someone who acted in a semi-automatic state, almost like a dream, during the murders.
But the prosecution had their own experts.
They did. Dr. R.O. Llewellyn, Dr. Charles Sisson, Dr. Joseph Paul DeRiver, who had done the initial interview, plus another unnamed expert mentioned.
And they found him.
Legally sane, although they did classify him, using the terminology of the time, as a sexual psychopath.
Sexual psychopath, but legally sane.
Exactly. The source even points to a Los Angeles Times headline from the trial. Slayer held sane by fourth expert. There's a clear clash of expert opinions.
This really raises that important point the sources touch on, doesn't it? The difference between how psychiatry might diagnose someone versus the legal standard for sanity.
Absolutely. That was the crux of it for the jury. The experts could describe his mental condition, his psychopathy, his compulsions. But the legal standard in California back then focused on whether he understood the nature and quality of his actions and knew they were wrong.
Did he know right from wrong? That was the legal question.
Essentially, yes. And on that specific point, the expert opinions presented in the source clearly diverged. Defense said no, prosecution said yes.
So the jury, who was on it?
8 women and 4 men.
And their decision?
They ultimately sided with the prosecution's experts. They found Otto Stephen Wilson legally sane, and therefore guilty of first-degree murder.
Which meant?
The sentence handed down was death.
And was the sentence carried out?
Yes. Wilson was sent to San Quentin prison. The sources recount that his conviction was later affirmed by the California Supreme Court. Interestingly, the Supreme Court even noted the discrepancy in the psychiatric testimony, but still upheld the trial court's finding of sanity.
So the legal bar for insanity wasn't met, despite the psychiatric descriptions?
That's how the courts ruled, yes.
Yeah.
Otto Stephen Wilson was executed in the gas chamber on September 20, 1945, less than a year after the murders.
Wow. So this deep dive, really relying on the source material we have, it's pulled back the curtain on just how horrific these crimes were and given us these disturbing insights into Wilson's mind, mainly through his own words and that psychiatric evaluation in the text.
Yeah, and we've really tried to stick just to that material, reporting impartially on what it contains, including those differing expert opinions, to give you the clearest picture the sources allow, without adding outside speculation.
Right. So what does this all mean? Where does this leave us?
Well, one thing to maybe mull over, drawing strictly from Wilson's account in the source, he talked about that urge, trying to suppress it with alcohol, and claimed when he finally let go, it was like an explosion, and he lost his sense of right and wrong in that moment. Thinking about that specific description as presented in the material, what might that suggest about the relationship between compulsion, conscious control, and the actual moment extreme violence erupts? Is there a point where control is perceived to be lost, even if legal responsibility remains? It's a difficult question raised by his own words in the text.